Welcome to the Education in Isolation podcast with me, Angela Connell, where we will explore the challenges of businesses moving from a face-to-face training mode to an online training environment. Many businesses have been caught off guard by the Covid-19 pandemic, but the situation is proving to be a catalyst for new possibilities and opportunities for the training industry. Let me and my guests help you make the most of these opportunities and to navigate the transition so that you and your organisation come out stronger and more resilient than when you went in. Education is the answer and you are the leader. Hi Deb, and welcome to Education in Isolation. So glad and happy to have you on our podcast. You are actually our virtual CFO, and we've been learning a lot about having a virtual CFO, our first time ever. We've never had one before. It's always been me doing everything. So it's been a bit different and new for me, a new learning process with working with the CFO. So we've got you on our podcast because we want to learn a bit more about you and what you've been doing through all this COVID-19 and all of your adjustments. So let's go through. Who are you and what do you do?
Thanks, Angela. So I'm Deborah Harris. I don't use the word CEO because we use the words Grow CFO and there's too many acronyms. But I'm the director and founder of our virtual Chief Financial Officer solution. And I am actually a business strategist rather than a CFO, but I employ CFOs.
Wow. And so what does that entail with doing that? So you have a team of CFOs and then you're managing their projects. Is that right?
Yes, so we have CFOs that are on team. So my husband Jeremy is my lead CFO, and we then have specialists that we bring in according to what is needed for the projects for our customers. Sometimes it's international tax, sometimes it's listing on a stock exchange, and we bring in the specialists that can do those particular tasks for our customers.
Yeah, so I know when I first started working with you, and for our listeners who have never had a CFO before, they're generally small business owners and they've never had that type of person within their organisation. For me personally, I struggled because I was like, what does a CFO actually do? I thought they just did accounts, but what I've learned is it's definitely not all about accounts. So if you could go in a little bit further about what is it to hire a CFO and who are your typical clients?
It's actually really quite interesting because I suppose the easiest way to answer it is maybe you've had the experience of going to your accountant at the end of the year and your accountant gives you a great big wad of tax returns to sign or papers to sign and congratulates you on the profit you've made in your business, and then you get their bill and then you get your tax bill. And you're left wondering, well, where the hell is the cash flow? Where the hell is the money to pay this? And what we found, we had a tax practice for a lot of years, 25 years. And what we found was that it was always looking backwards. And the role of a CFO is actually to look forwards. What is the next funding requirement going to be? How can we grow this business? How can we make sure that we've got a strategy in place that gives not only good profit, but good cash flow? How can we make sure that someone hasn't got an enormous tax bill that they haven't paid off? How can we make sure that they've got the very best advice coming in, ready to take their business to the whole next level? So that's what we mean about grow, and that's why our name is Grow CFO, because we're really positioning those fast growth companies or the companies that are really positioned to take it to the next level, and we're making sure their financial strategy underneath what they do is really sound.
Yeah, and I know for myself personally, I'm not a big numbers or financial type of person. I'm a creative star, so I tend to be more in that creative space. And so for me, it's very much, I can manage our accounts and go through Xero and reconcile and things like that, and I understand what a P&L and a balance sheet. I understand that sort of stuff, but forecasting, and I know a lot of small businesses do struggle with forecasting other than looking at what they've done in the past. So for a virtual CFO, my understanding is generally for smaller organisations who don't have the budget to have a permanent full-time CFO. And most people would think as a small business, they'd be thinking, you have to be big to have a CFO. What do you think about that?
There's actually, so if you were looking at a traditional CFO, it would be around $200,000 for a really good quality CFO in a year. What we found was our ability to interpret what a small business needs is different from what a big company CFO might require. And we're also, because we're seeing so many different businesses, we're able to take cross-industry experience and say, this is what's working in this sector. Could it work in your sector? Think of things like Airbnb. Could that work for pets? Could that work for the same style? Could it work for your pool or your yard or other facilities that you might have? So it's really about that cross-industry experience and being across multiple countries too. So we're global. We started a global business and we work globally. So we can see what's happening in the US, in Africa, in Japan, in China, in Malaysia. So there's lots of experience that comes from dealing with different countries in Europe, and it gives you this different perspective on what you would have if you were just operating
with one CFO. Yeah.
A single company or a tax accountant in a regional or in a specific location.
Yeah, that's very similar to what we do at Vivacity, is being a consultant working with many training organisations. We have the benefit, like we've attended over 300 ASQA audits, so we have a lot of experience with audits with different types of training organisations. So I can definitely see the benefit there, because the benefit our clients get is they get our skills and knowledge compared to a compliance officer that would be in their organisation. We've got a much wider experience in a variety of different areas, so we're mainly Australia, so it's all the states in Australia, but it's also different training products. And that's what we do, is we teach them how to apply those different techniques into their organisation. So very, very similar. So what has been your biggest challenge in your business during COVID-19?
Well, like a lot of other businesses, we got hit because some of our customers couldn't pay straight away. So that was our biggest challenge, was to work out exactly how we could get our customers pivoting as fast as possible so that they had a plan in place so that they could continue paying us. And that led to a whole range of really interesting strategies that we developed and ways we've been paid. And it's been a fascinating learning journey that we wouldn't have had if we hadn't done that.
And what's the pivot that you've seen that has been the most outstanding? Like it was like you were like, wow, did we really help them do this? Who do you think, and what do you think that was?
I've actually got two specific clients that just immediately spring to mind. The first one was basically an events-based company, but they're really in the education sector. They were having events that were training people, and they were doing live events. So we turned that around and said, what does this look like if your event is wrapped into a subscription model, where alongside them going to this event, this workshop that's a physical live workshop, they couldn't really change that because they had the rights to that event in Australia and around in the Western world. So they couldn't really adjust that. But what they could do was set that within the context of having a broader subscription program. And what that means now is that they have people paying them already for events that they haven't even got. They don't even know when they can have them. But because they're now working online and having some of the pre-event stuff online and supporting them around that, then they've been able to actually increase the ticket price as well. So they've turned around from really being at the point of almost having to shut their doors,
which was the majority of the event industry.
Correct. to now being, they had a 6-figure month. So they went from,
wow,
yeah, exactly. It was a massive impact on them. And I think probably the best one was one of our largest clients. They were looking to list their company, and they have a variety of different parts to their company. They had a resort-based section, and then they had an education-based section, then they had a tech platform, and all these little subsidiary companies as well, including health and all sorts of things. And we were able to help them form that all into what was actually the founder's vision, which was to have an education-based company. And that meant that they're listing that on the New York Stock Exchange towards the end of this year. And since October, their valuation has risen 3 times, even though they've got no resorts open.
wow.
And that's really literally because they were able to pivot to a service-based system and an education-based company, and that they could do that alongside having resorts that would eventually open and be able to be used as campuses. But it didn't require them to have those open.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing, and I have been seeing this as well, is there's been a lot of businesses who, particularly service-based businesses, who suffered a lot through this and have pivoted to education and training. And I suppose that's the ability to be able to move on to online learning platforms as well. So, yeah, I think that's really good that they're able to move and adjust. And the thing is, so many of these business owners have so much knowledge and experience that they can share with other people. Yeah. And so for you personally then, within your business, what was the challenge of, so you had your clients had dropped, so you're concerned about them losing money that would then have an ongoing effect with you. What was the hurdles that you faced? So some of them was pivoting those clients, and then what did you do to overcome them?
The main thing that we've really developed is a very strong understanding of what's available funding and grant-wise for those businesses. We really went into that deeply because we knew that if we could get them some emergency relief funding, some grants, some of the tidal wave pools of money that are out there, so remember that even though people are struggling with cash flow, there's no less money in the world. There's actually more money being printed. It's just not flowing. So it's a matter of actually securing that cash and securing that capital. And so we've done some interesting things. So in some instances, we've taken shares in the company, and that knowing that we could pivot them or that they would turn around, we've had shares. We've done some revenue share. So where we have somebody who can't actually pay anything right now, we've offered our services on the understanding that they pay 15% of their revenue lift. So not just 15% of the revenue, but it compels us to help them lift their revenue, and they pay 15% of that up to an agreed figure. And that enables those businesses to take advantage of the skills and resources that we have and really turn around as quickly as possible into a new area, into a new field. We make sure that we support them we've obviously got international contacts that might be doing a similar thing somewhere, that might be looking for partnership opportunities. So we support them with all of that information that we've got.
Wow. There's been a lot that you've implemented, and it's identifying, there's going to be some people who can't afford to pay right now, but that's your confidence in them, is investing your time really for in return for the shares and that 15%. So that's quite a innovative way of thinking about it. I've never heard of that model before. So well done.
Very unaccountancy. So we have a couple of policies. Number one, be very unaccountanty.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not actually a word, but it should be a word. So that's our first philosophy, is be very unaccountancy, look at all possibilities, look at all interest. I mean, let's face it, we're great at financial strategy, so we should be able to pull something different out of the box.
Mm.
And the other thing is never leave anyone unhelped.
Yeah.
That is part of our core philosophy. Anyone who's come our way since COVID hit, we have helped them in some capacity, regardless of whether they got paid. That was just for us, that's a deal breaker. You know, they just need help.
Yeah.
Love it. So we just find a way for it to work for both of us.
Yeah. And then the benefits to that would be?
Raving fans all over the place. but just because it's the right thing.
Yeah.
You know, so there's an intrinsic benefit in that. It's the right thing to do, to not somebody hurting and behind and struggling to keep a roof over their heads and feed their family. And it's just part of our core philosophy. So it's no different to what we would do normally. It's just kind of more pronounced right now.
Yeah. Yeah, because it needed to be in the current situation that we're in as well. So these solutions that you came up with and, you know, like the strategy of the 15% with the shares and things like that, how did you come across the solution? Was it obvious or did you stumble across it? Was it suggested?
Well, our thing is financial strategy. So it was obvious but not easy. Some things are not easy to implement, so they need a bit of work to think around how you're going to do this. But it's actually an exercise for our brains and our willingness more than anything else. So it was fairly obvious to me that we had to have a solution that as long as we had sufficient cash flow ourselves, we would be okay. So let's work out how we can make sure that everybody else has sufficient and not worry about there not being enough.
Yeah. Yeah. And I suppose your brain was working overtime with those strategies.
Yeah. But in the end, it turned out to be reasonably simple to say, hey, this is what we can do for you. Would that be of interest? You know, we've helped people apply for grants, and then just, you know, part of their grant is us delivering financial officer solutions. So that by the time they get the grant approved, we're already paid for.
Yeah, yeah. And then you got your next strategy moving forward, yeah. And I know from what we do, because we've worked with people before and we've learnt new ways of doing different things due to that particular client's need, you are able to build strategies around what you've learnt before. Yeah. What do you think it is that you learnt prior to COVID-19 that enabled you to be able to move so quickly through all of this?
Non-traditional thinking. It's definitely been around the non-traditional thinking. That's hence we use the term very unaccountancy. And that's not to denigrate accountants. Accountants are terrific, and we
and they need to do what they do.
And more accountants could do what we do. So just to be clear, they could do what we do. We set out to make sure that there's two things about our brand. One is that we'll try to find an alternative solution. If someone says no, that means not yet, or maybe not that way. So we're used to thinking outside of the box because we deal with a lot of entrepreneurs. So that's a really fast-paced area. They're fast growth companies. A lot of them have got these amazing projects that they do, and they've got amazing philanthropic targets that they do. And it is not within me to not have those succeed. So I have to find a way to be not working outside of the system, just making the system work for me.
Mm.
And a system should work for you, not against you. That's my belief anyway. And so that's where we really approach it, is to say, how can I make this system work for me? How can I make it work for my clients? And so I guess it's just the experience of working with a lot of entrepreneurs across the world who are in all stages of startup to being quite advanced in their entrepreneurial journey, that lets us see that difference in thinking from traditional accounting and traditional business ownership to the more entrepreneurial, forward-facing stuff.
So what I'm hearing there is, with the CFO, it's still about money, and it's still about how to manage that money and forecasting, but it's looking at it more from not what we have to pay the tax office, but what we need to do to build and grow the business.
Correct. And to a certain extent, we get caught up in what the tax office wants from us.
Everyone does.
Yeah. And yet, we pay Australian taxes for the privilege of having a government that can support people like through JobKeeper. And there's millions of Australian families that wouldn't have had food on the table if it hadn't been for that.
Yeah.
So I don't actually begrudge that. That is paying my company tax, and my personal tax is actually my privilege for being Australian.
Yeah, and it's your bit for the nation.
Yeah, if I think about it that way, I'm not investing all my time and energy in trying to overthrow that. I'm actually investing my time and energy in going, you know what, now I can just set about growing and providing for my company and my family. So I don't get all caught up in it. It's just a story we tell ourselves, that the tax man is bad. The tax man gives us the roads we drive on and the hospitals we go to, and it's not all bad. There's some great stuff there. It's just a story that we tell ourselves,
and a story we've been told growing up by family and parents.
And I agree, though, that I would rather have a 15% company tax rate than a 30% company tax rate, but I don't have that, so I just work around what I do have and make sure that I can still make a profitable company out of what I've got.
Yeah, and if it wasn't for the taxes we had been paying, we wouldn't have had JobKeeper, and we wouldn't have had the support that we're having right now to help everyone through this. And I'm pretty proud as an Australian that we've been able to sustain, and I see us bouncing back as well. So I think it's quite a positive future.
Yeah, I think so too. Because I have so many connections in other countries, I see what's happening in a lot of places that are considered third world or developing nations, and for some of them it's dire, really dire, and heartbreaking.
People starving, and they haven't got a roof over their head, and
then some, and it's just it's not good. And I don't want to look past that, but I do think we have it very, very lucky.
Yes, very fortunate country. Okay, so through all of this, what has been your biggest achievement? What are you the most proud of what's happened, what you've done?
Well, I think it's still the commitment to giving, to say, no matter what, there are still ways that we can contribute and give. We've got as our core value for philanthropic spirit. So by that we mean we choose customers in particular that are that either through their products and services or through their philanthropic acts or giving are making bigger contributions to the world. And that might be education like yourself, or zero poverty, which is some of the entities like Ag Unity. And there's just some brilliant projects out there that we've been really fortunate to be engaged with at a CFO level. So we're having a real opportunity to make better our world and influence our world, and that's just so amazing. And I think that that's probably it. The fact that we're just still out there able to make the commitments, still giving to B1G1, still very passionate about the Sustainable Development Goals, and able to just keep that as a core perspective of ours. So I'm really proud of that for us, because we make sure that 1% of our revenue goes completely to projects and to giving. So through this stage, we've just committed to keeping on growing so that we can grow that giving commitment, and that's been our head down, bum up challenge. But that's part of who we are, and I'm so proud of what we're achieving with that.
Yeah. I'd be very proud of that too. I think that wherever you're able to keep going and keep sustainable with what you were doing prior to COVID-19, and you're still doing it now, that's awesome. You should be very proud of that. So what strategies have you put in place? So it firstly, getting through this. So what did you do? Like if we were to step into 2-3 months ago and when this hit, what did you do to move your way through? And then second part to this question, what are your strategies moving forward?
Okay. So the first thing is that all business exists to solve a problem, and it's just about working out what the problem is. So our business exists to solve the problem of fast growth businesses not having enough cash flow. How we solve that problem changes in the context of what's happening in our environment. So COVID made massive changes. Our biggest companies were the ones that were suddenly not able to keep paying or pay to the same amount. They dropped their payments. So it was a matter of going, you know what, we can see this happening. So how can we add value to those clients? We know this is going to happen. How can we add value? So the first thing is identifying what the value is that you offer. The second thing is seeing how it's changed in the environment as the environment changes. The third thing is to find a new way to add value at a new price point that can be delivered quicker and cheaper than you did before. So it's about lifting your game so that you can have that the same level of impact and not lose that customer.
And not lose money yourself.
That's right. So the fourth thing then is, how do you then make that work long term, and when do you renegotiate that? And that's kind of the stage we're at now, is how do we renegotiate now that some of these countries are coming out of the emergency stage and they're emerging into the new stage? How do we then take it forward? So it's about being flexible and still moving into, I call it a vacuum. So there's still a gap, a need that the customer has, and that's creating a vacuum that we can be sucked into. And if we're sucked into that vacuum, how can we provide so much value and yet still show them that there's another gap that we can then fill, and that they will take that as a raving fan to their other people around them and let them know what else there is out there, and that we are the what else.
Yeah. So how do you see and where do you think your business, or where or how will your business be operating within the 6 to 12 months time? So you were already working from your laptop.
Angela before, when she said you work from home, and I went, I work from home if that's where my laptop is.
Yeah. So work from laptop, which can be anywhere in the world.
Yes.
So your plan was already to work like that, and so you never had a plan to move into an office. That's basically where I was going from there. Whereas there's been other companies like Vivacity where we went from an office to now working from a laptop, which could be anywhere in the world. Which, on a side note, one of the bonuses I see to that, and you mostly would see this as well, it doesn't matter where we hire someone now. They could be anywhere in Australia because we're so used to doing our remote meetings now. So I think that's a bonus. So where do you see yourself 6 to 12 months' time with how you're operating? And in particular, I know you've got a lot of, you've talked a lot about your international clients who you were saying earlier that you would go and see them face to face. So I want you to go a bit through how was it you were working with your clients prior to COVID, and how do you see yourself working with them in the future?
So a number of my clients have got fairly high-profile international names, and they do a lot of speaking events. And I would go and support them at their events by maybe having a trade stand or just attending their events. And usually what would happen is that they would put me on stage. So that was how I pretty much won the next big clients, because they would see me speaking with authority on one of my current client stages. So that strategy obviously has had to go by the wayside. So I've had to have some different strategies in it. We are doing far more in the education space. So our passion is education. We believe that there's a difference between being the doers. So as CFOs, you would expect maybe we would want to do all the doing and take that role of being professional in that and make it too hard for somebody else to step in and take over. But in actual fact, what we believe in is to have a space for education in the business, so that we educate the business owners as to what needs to happen in their own business, and we do that in a way that matches what their nature and what their personality is, so that they can learn it how they need to use it, rather than it being all jargon and everything else. So we're really developing much more in that education space. We're going to look at much more at doing short and longer term courses with some consulting work or some mentoring alongside that. So that's the next project that we're rolling out within the next couple of months. Then we're so passionate about some of our clients have got amazing projects. For example, Ag Unity are developing an app that sits on a cheap smartphone that enables some 2 billion fisher and farmer folk globally don't actually have good access to education and information. And this particular app enables them to secure their market crop price through the smartphone and smart technology. So the smart contracts enable them to. So this is the problem that they're solving. It's easier to give you a case example. I'm a farmer in Ethiopia, and I grow 3 bags of coffee beans, and I take them to my local produce merchant, who says, I'll give you $30 per bag for the 3 bags next week when I've sold them at market. And I go back next week to get my $90. And coffee is an annual crop, so $90 is my sum total income for the year. Mm. I go back and the produce agent says, no, you only gave me 2 bags and they're only worth $20. So now my annual income's gone from $90 down to $40. So this technology enables those businesses, those farmers, to show or to secure the $90 that they were owed in the first place. But it goes further than that. What they're aiming to do in the future is, say you're sitting now at a coffee shop in Sydney and you have a cup of coffee, you can now tip the farmer $1. Imagine tipping a farmer $1 when $1 makes such a big difference to their income. So it's projects like that where we get to go and see the development team and their first roll out in different locations. It's digging the corner foundation for the soup kitchen in Souping Start Village that's associated with the Tau Game Lodge. And it's seeing the beach cleanup in Bali that's associated with the beach cafe. It's going to see a person, sorry, this one makes me emotional every time. It's having someone receive the gift of sight by having cataract surgery, going and donating the cataract surgery and being invited in to the cataract van because that project is supporting vision. So I can't wait to be able to travel internationally again with my laptop. But and visit some of the projects, because by being on the ground in those projects, I don't need to be on the ground in the projects, but it's just where my heart lies, and I love it.
Yeah. And so what are you doing in between then when you can't travel, do any international travel at the moment?
I'm doing a lot of international speaking, which is quite funny. So the social projects still continue, and if I find out about a social project and I know someone who should be connected into it because it's their passion, I reach out to them and say, hey, this is going on, are you interested? And that leads to lots of interesting stuff. Like I did a Japanese morning breakfast show on Friday morning just past, and it's really interesting to have that just that ability to connect people from all walks of life and who need stuff. And we're aiming by the end of 12 months to have team across the world, so some in South America and some in South Africa. And the reason is we want to start to see if we can establish some price parity. So doing what we're doing is great if you're a first world business, but what if you're not a first world business? How do we make it possible that those businesses get some kind of ability to access the same levels of intelligence and knowledge and so forth? So we're really focusing on that, and by having team in the different parts of the world, it will help them to really be available for our customers 24/7, but it will also mean that we can start to roll out some interesting price parity projects and just see how we go with that.
So some exciting times ahead by the sounds of it.
I hope so.
Yeah.
No one wants to be a boring accountant.
No, certainly not. So I'm keen to see what does evolve for you over the next 6 to 12 months, and you being a massive strategist and that being your area of expertise, I could just imagine the sort of things that you're coming up, and I'm sure there's still opportunities and strategies to be developed that we don't know of yet, because we don't know how we're going to transition out. I think we're very fortunate in Australia because we, being so far away and the other countries being affected first, we've actually been able to learn from their mistakes, I suppose, and also where they did well, so where they got things right. So,
and we're also in a position to lead.
Yes, certainly.
The world needs strong leadership out of this. They need to see how people are advancing forward, and that we don't have to go back to the old patterns that weren't serving us, that weren't serving our ecology, that were doing damage to our environment and leaving people feeling stressed and unhealthy. And if you've got any viewers out there that are really struggling to nail a space, then have a look at the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, because the world has identified the 17 biggest problems, and if all business is about solving problems, there's the 17 there. They have lots of measures underneath. They have lots of KPIs underneath. Make one of them yours and be known for it.
And at least then you've got a target and a goal to go for, because I know there's a lot of people who'd like to help, but they don't know how. That's where the sustainable goals are really, really good, because it's got the priorities within it. And there's a lot more information in there about those priorities, which we actually have on our website. So you're able to access those sustainable goals information about that on our website. So I'm sure you've already answered this question, but I am really keen to hear, how do you keep motivated each day? And I think I know what some of the answers are, but what is it that gets you up every morning and keeps you going?
I have 7 numbers. So this is a different thing to what you thought I might say, because my family definitely motivates me, and I'm definitely motivated by working alongside my husband. It was a dream of ours for a long time to start something together differently and just have it be known for it being a big warm hug. But the real thing that makes me do what I do is that right now on the face of the earth, there's 125 small to medium-sized businesses. 125 million, not just 125. 125 million, so that's the first number. The statistics were that in 3 years' time, 60% of those would go out of business. Now the statistics are saying that it's closer to 75%, which means that's around 75 million to 93 million small businesses due to go out of business. And one of the top 5 reasons is cash flow, poor cash flow. When you look at 50% of those businesses being employers of other families, that's some 930 million people whose household income, like if you take an average household size of 4 people, that's 930 million people whose household incomes are going to be impacted. So that's nearly 1 billion, which is 1/7 of our population. So I'm really committed to that 1/7 of the population. And there's 7 people in my family. I have 5 children. And that number 7 is very important to me because there's 7 levers to cash flow. And there's 7 direct points that we can take in a business to improve their cash flow so that they don't have to go out of business. And that's the reason why I'm so passionate about it, is that I know that we can make a difference. I know accountants can make a difference. We have the numbers, we can see it. If we just think about it, we can see it. And the other thing is that for everyone that I do, I know that there's one more number, and it's that 1%, the 1% of our revenue. So everything that I do, that I charge out, that I bill, I know that there's going to be that percentage of people getting impacted around the world who wouldn't be able to. There'd be women in Bangladesh with a sewing machine to earn an income for their family, or people in Microloan Foundation in Zambia and Zimbabwe and Malawi getting access to education for women to support their business loans. And I know that you're very one of your goals is really around the whole equality thing. And it's not that it's just women that we support. It's just that was something that I knew for you was about the equality side of things. And to be able to really impact around the world like that, I need to keep that number in a really front of mind place. So they're sitting along the front of my desk, these on a bright pink post-it note.
I love it.
To remind me that those 125 million, I can't do it all by myself, that's a really big number. But I know that we can do something, and I can't not do something when I realised just how many people were at stake.
And it certainly makes it a lot clearer and of exactly what small business does. Small business around the world, like I've always focused in Australia, but when you think about it around the world, in particular during these times, we are being affected as a small business due to COVID-19, and we are. I know in Australia, small business employs 80% of the employees. So having them impacted, we need to be able to identify, well, how can we improve that? And then when you look at that around the world, and that's where I truly believe in, getting into masterminds and joining groups with other like-minded business owners, because they just get it and they understand what you're going through. And you can learn so much from each other as well. Yeah.
Absolutely.
A lot to think about. You've given a lot to think about, and it's very inspiring as well, Deb. So you've definitely inspired me, and I think it's awesome what your goals are and that motivation each day. I know for me, my motivation is education changes lives. And our number one B1G1 goal is that education should be available to everybody. It shouldn't matter who you are, where you live, the colour of your skin. It shouldn't matter. We should all be able to get access to education. And one of the reasons why I'm promoting as many people as possible to get their training online, so that we're able to get out there to more people, whether it's in Australia or overseas. So thank you very much for joining me today, Deb. It's been awesome having a chat to you and learning a bit more about you and your business and what you do.
Thank you, Angela. Thanks very much for inviting me to speak. Thanks.
And we look forward to catching up with you soon.
Absolutely.
You've been listening to the Education in Isolation podcast with me, Angela Connell. If you'd like access to the show notes and other resources to find subscription options, you can find us at educationinisolation.com. The Education in Isolation podcast is proud to be part of the Experts on Air podcast network.